In this session, you will learn about Modalverben, then you will learn about Modalverben in Präteritum. Then we will look at something called as Wechselpräpositionen and then something called as Positionsverben. Number 1 and number 2, you should already know, by the way, because this should have been covered in A1. If not, we will look at them. This will be a revision for you. If not, you will learn something new today. When do you need Modalverben? You need it when you want to add more context to what you are saying, what you are writing. What do I mean by this? Let's say if you want to say I read or I write, right? But if you want to say I want to read or I should read or I have to write, here you are adding more context. Here you need Modalverben. Then why do you need Modalverben in Präteritum? I normally tell you that you don't need to learn Präteritum for everything, because if you're talking about past, in spoken German normally we use Partizip II, but there are always exceptions. So Modalverben also in spoken German are used sometimes in Präteritum. So when you're talking about past, and for example, if you have to say I had to read, right? I had to write, I had to take the exam. Here you can use Partizip II, but it's better, or it's more common that you use the Präteritum of Modalverben. For example, I want to read is ich will lesen. I wanted to read is ich wollte lesen, right? I wanted to eat, ich wollte essen. Then Wechselpräpositionen, what are they? Quite often, of course, when you're learning German language, you will learn all the prepositions, and you will see there are some prepositions which are always accusative, meaning what follows them will be in accusative case. Then there are prepositions, they are considered to be dative. Strict dative, that means what follows them is always dative. Then there are prepositions which call them as like changing prepositions, or in German Wechselpräpositionen, meaning what follows them can be sometimes accusative or can be sometimes dative. It's not that difficult to understand. We will look at the examples then. Positionsverben, it's much better when you look at the examples. All right, disclaimer. This is the 4th session, by the way, guys. All right, in last session we looked at conjunctions. So we looked at conjunctions such as oder, aber, und. So you know this is and, or. So this is and, or, but. You know these. Also, when you use conjunction, that means you are trying to usually connect two sentences, right? So the second sentence will be following these conjunctions, and there is no change in the structure of the sentence. For example, ich lese, even if it is after und, so und ich lese, it's the same. That's not a good example, but let's say if I want to say something like this, okay? Ich lese ein Buch, okay? But if I want to say it after a conjunction, so if I write und, then I will have this. It remains the same, only point is that this I becomes small. But if I also, it will be the same if I write the sentence after aber and after oder. It's not aber, you just say aber, and you say not oder, you just say oder. So you don't emphasize the R part. Then, but if you are using conjunctions like, for example, weil, da, or das, den, so when you use them, the sentence structure changes. How does it change? So if I use, let's say, because, if I say because I read a book or because I'm reading a book, so if I can use da or weil. So let's say I say weil ich. Now instead of subject coming over here, it will not be that. Here we will have the object. Weil ich ein Buch lese. Why so? That's how it is. Okay. And so da and weil, they are not exactly the same, but right now you can just think of them as because, or you can use them when you are giving reasons. You can also think of den as the same, but with den the sentence structure does not change. What is das? You can think it of as that. If you want to say that in your sentence, like you say something and then say that, and then you have a sentence, so you can use das over there. Then trotzdem, again, it can mean many different things depending on what you're saying, but normally it means even though, okay? Sondern is something similar to aber, but sondern usually means rather or instead. In terms of mathematics, you can think it of as not A but B, that is nicht A sondern B. Deswegen and daher, there are differences between them, but for now you can just think of them as hence or therefore, as a result, something like that. Okay. Let's look at Modalverben. So you should already know this table. If not, if we look at them. Before we do that, why do we need, so what do each of these Modalverben mean? So wollen, you can use it when you have a strong wish, or you just want to say I want to do something, or I want, so when you have a strong wish or strong want, then you use wollen. Können is used usually to describe a capability or a skill. For example, I can do that, or I can program in this language, or I cannot. Or you can also use it to say which skill you don't have, or possibilities, right? So can be used for that. Müssen you use when you are describing some kind of an obligation or some kind of a must. Okay. Dürfen is, you can when you see dürfen, think of permission. So let's say, if I believe most of you are working in offices, so you will see this notice, man darf hier nicht rauchen, right? So they are telling you are not allowed to smoke inside, right? You also see this in trains. So when you see dürfen, think of permission. Sollen is something, it can also have many things. It can be used in different contexts. So, but for now, you can think it of as should, like someone should do something, or how something should be. Okay. Möchten is actually not a modal verb. The modal verb is mögen. Okay. Möchten is Konjunktiv 2 of mögen. What is Konjunktiv 2? Don't need to know that right now. So, but just know that möchten is a derivative or a different form of mögen, okay? But normally we use möchten instead of mögen. When you can say this, it's a wish, okay? So wollen is a strong wish, möchten is it's still a wish. You can think it of as, let's say if you go to a restaurant, you can say I want a pizza, I want to eat pizza, but normally we say, I like to eat pizza, or I would like to have a pizza. So you don't say ich will ein Pizza, you say ich möchte ein Pizza, right? Or if you want to say I want to order a falafel döner, right? So you can say ich will ein falafel döner bestellen, but normally people say, or I say ich möchte ein falafel döner bestellen. Okay. And then you need to know this conjugations. Please remember them. One where people make mistake is when they are conjugating these Modalverben for the personal pronoun ihr. So you make mistake over here. Please be careful. All right. Once we have looked at that, then we will look at, let's try to see what we learned so far. Let's try to put that into practice. So let's see if we can translate this and write the sentence in German. I work, it's obvious. So it will be ich arbeite. Then I want to work. Here you will use the modal verb wollen, conjugated for I, which it will be will. Then I am allowed to work, again permission. So here you will use the modal verb dürfen. So conjugated for I will be darf. Then should, so soll, can will be kann. Let's look at the answers. So before I do that, here is the conjugation table for arbeiten, which means work. But you need this conjugation table only for, if you're using modal verb, right? So when you use modal verb, you only need the infinitive form. You need the conjugation table when there is no modal verb. But it's good to know the conjugation table for every verb that you are using. So the answers are, I work will mean ich arbeite. I want to work, you can write this as ich. Then work, arbeiten in infinitive form at the last position just before the full stop, and then will. So wollen for ich is will. Then möchten will become, so instead of saying ich will arbeiten, you can also say ich möchte arbeiten, right? So ich möchte arbeiten, ich will arbeiten, they both imply the same, I want to work. Then ich darf arbeiten is, so dürfen becomes darf for ich, sollen becomes soll for ich, können becomes kann for ich. Okay, please notice here when there was no modal verb, so at the second position you had the verb. When there is a modal verb, at the second position you have the modal verb, and at the last position you have the actual verb, and the verb will be in its infinitive form. You only conjugate the modal verb. Okay, and if there is no modal verb, you conjugate the actual verb at the second position. The subject over here it is ish. It's usually before or after the verb. What do I mean by this? Let's say if I say today I want to work, right? So I will say heute will ich arbeiten. Okay, when it is like that, so when some other word takes the position before the verb, so the subject will goes after the verb. All right. Let's look at Modalverben in Präteritum. This is important. You should remember this table because it's used quite often in spoken German. So I don't want to go through it, but I'll just go through the for ich. So ich wollte, ich konnte, ich musste, ich durfte, ich sollte, ich mochte. If there is some mistake, please let me know in the comments. Let's try to write those sentences using Präteritum. So instead of saying I want to work, if I want to say I wanted to work, then it would be ich wollte arbeiten, ich mochte arbeiten, ich durfte arbeiten, meaning I was allowed to work, ich sollte arbeiten, meaning I should have worked, ich konnte arbeiten, implying I could have worked. Okay, again, the grammar remains the same. By grammar, I mean the sentence structure. So again, here ich arbeite, it means it's still in present tense. If you want to write like I've worked, if you want to say I worked, so it will be arbeitete. Sorry, not that. I will just write it. So arbeitete. So it will be this. I hope the spelling is correct. Okay, and see when there is again at the second position you have the modal verb. When there is a modal verb, it's conjugated. The actual verb or the verb is at the last position before the full stop in its infinitive form. All right. This two tables together, you can go through it. What is something you can remember is that you don't see any umlaut, that dot dot, when you have modal verb in Präteritum. So in the spelling of these conjugation tables, in the conjugation table for modal verb in Präteritum, you don't see any umlaut. Of course, you see umlaut in the infinitive form, but not for the individual pronouns. Personal pronouns is what I'm saying. Okay, let's see if we can write all of these in German. Okay, you can take some time, pause the video, and then see if your answers match with the answers that I'm going to provide now. So I want to say the cup is on the table. So the cup is die Tasse, table is, wait, let me get the marker working. So yes, so the cup is die Tasse, the table is der Tisch. Okay, but it becomes den Tisch because you want to say is on, so you will say ist auf. The correct preposition over here is auf, and what comes after auf over here should be dative, so there becomes den. The picture is above the sofa. The picture is das Bild. Ist. Above is über. And then you have sofa. Sofa is das Sofa, I believe. And then das Sofa becomes dem Sofa because dative. What is the difference between auf and über? When you are describing, let's say, something like this. Let's say there is a table. I hope you can, very bad. Let's say there is this surface. This is how I think of it, okay? And then let's say this is the cup. If the bottom of the cup is touching the table, you use the preposition auf, okay? If there is some gap, you say über. That's why we say the picture, I mean, it can be it's above the sofa, right? So it's not touching the sofa, so it's über. Then the ice cream is in the refrigerator. Here the correct preposition is in. Again, der Kühlschrank becomes dem Kühlschrank because dative. Why it's dative, we'll look into it. Then the file is in the folder. The Datei is in dem Ordner. Also, you can just, instead of writing in dem, you can just write im, okay? But don't do that for auf dem. So it's not auf, it will always be two words. So auf dem. Fruit basket is on the dining table. So fruit basket is der Obstkorb ist auf dem Esstisch. Okay? Der Tisch. So then Tisch is table, Esstisch is dining table. They both are masculine. That's why dem. Okay? He is standing behind you. Steht hinter dir. The charger is behind the printer. Das Ladegerät ist hinter dem Drucker. She is standing. So sie steht in front of you, vor dir. Okay? Vor dir. The remote is in front of the TV. Die Fernbedienung ist vor dem Fernseher. Vor is for in front, hinter is for behind. Okay. The kid is between the father and the mother. Das Kind ist zwischen dem Vater und der Mutter. Again, check. Vater masculine, so dem. So there becomes dem. Mutter feminine, die Mutter, so becomes der. Okay. Because dative. Zwischen means between. He is standing, er steht, next to them. So next to is neben. Them here it is third party plural, so ihnen. Okay. Again, so it was third party is the pronoun for third party plural is ihr, but and then it becomes ihnen for dative. Okay. The shelf is next to the window, so the shelf is das Regal, is next, ist neben to the window. Fenster is das Fenster, so becomes dem Fenster. Here all the prepositions that you see over here, these are referred to as Wechselpräpositionen, and what comes after them can be sometimes can be accusative or can be dative. Here it is dative because here you are just describing a position of an object. So the objects are what are the subjects, and you are describing their positions relative to some other objects, right? So here when you're describing position of something and you are using Wechselpräpositionen, what comes after these prepositions is dative. So when is it accusative? When you are describing something which is not a position, so you're describing some, or the sentence implies a movement. So if I say please keep the cup on the table, then here I'm describing some kind of a movement, right? Or sentence implies movement, so you will move the cup from where it is to be on the table, right? So here it will be accusative. Let's look at again here the same prepositions. So when is it again? Here are the list of some of the Wechselpräpositionen. Here is a list of some of the Wechselpräpositionen. I believe this is the complete list, but if you, I mean, this is the list that you should know for now at least. So I told you when it is dative. Let's look at when it is accusative. Let's look at some examples. So here, please ignore the blue box over here, liegen versus liegen. We'll look into it, but let's just say if you want to say the plate is on the table, okay? So you will say plate is Teller, der Teller ist, you can say ist. Then on the table, so auf, Tisch is there, so becomes there. Let me just move this over here again, so it is dative, okay? But then if I say you keep the plate on the table, now the sentence implies there has to be some movement, right? So the plate has to be moved from where it is to be, so that it is on the table, right? So here, and the plate is lying on the table, right? You cannot say the plate is standing on the table. Maybe it's in some rack, but normally the plates lie on the table. So you will say sie, I'm being formal with you, so sie legen den Teller. So Teller here is the object, it will be accusative. Then preposition auf, den Tisch. Here what comes after auf is not dative, but it is, instead it is accusative. So here there is movement, so accusative. Now I just want to say you can keep the same sentence with a little bit more context. So you, instead of saying you keep the plate, I will say you can keep the table on the table. So you will use Modalverb. So instead of, so this legen will go over here, and in the second position you will have the Modalverb. Okay. So I hope you understand why dative and why accusative in these three examples. Now what is the difference between liegen versus legen? I believe in English we just have one verb, so to lie, but in German, so you have liegen and legen. So you use liegen when you are just describing position of something. So here instead of ist, you can say liegt, okay? So you will use this table and you will use it for third party. So this table is incorrect. It's the same thing, so it should be ich liege, du liegst, sie liegt, wir liegen, ihr liegt, small sc, capital SC again, liegen. So you will use this one, third party, right? Instead of this, you will say that instead of saying that the plate is on the table, you can also say the plate is lying on the table. So der Teller liegt auf dem Tisch. When do you use legen? When you are describing some kind of a position. So you are saying, please keep the plate on the table. So you will use this, okay, and not this. I hope it's fine what I mean by this and by this. Similarly, so in English we have the word standing, like something standing on something, or so I hope you get what I'm saying. So in German we have stehen and stellen, right? You use stehen when you are describing the position of an object, where you use stellen when you are the sentence describes some kind of a moment. For example, if I want to say the bottle is on the table, the bottle is die Flasche, the table is der Tisch, is on, so ist auf, and because it's describing position, what follows auf is dative, so auf dem Tisch. Now I have you keep the bottle on the table. I am asking you to do it, so there will be, it implies some kind of moment, so sie stellen. Okay, here I could have used steht instead of ist, but here I have to use stellen. Okay, sie stellen die Flasche auf den Tisch. Here it will be accusative. Then just using Modalverb, so you can keep the bottle on the table. So sie stellen goes here at the last position, infinitive form, and here it is können. Sie können die Flasche auf den Tisch stellen. Question and answer for you at the same time. So if I change this sie to du, so it will become kannst. If I have du over here, it will become du stellst. But when I use du over here, this will become kannst, but this will still remain stellen because it has to be in infinitive form when used with a modal verb. So I hope you clear what's stehen, what's stellen. Now again, what I'm trying to say by this is that, so let me just go back. So here there were two different scenarios, stehen, stellen, then liegen versus legen. So for two different scenarios, here what I'm trying to say is that this is not a mistake, it's on purpose. So hängen versus hängen. When you're describing a position, these two tables are the same. So okay, don't think there is some spelling mistake. So what I'm trying to say is that you use the same verb for both the situations, when you are describing a position and when you are you are saying a sentence and that sentence implies some kind of movement. Okay. So what you just looked at are referred to as some of the Positionsverben, so verbs describing position. So liegen, stehen, hängen is when you're describing a position. Legen, stellen, and hängen is when you're saying a sentence and the sentence describes some kind of movement. Here are some, as usual, so please see if you can find the meanings of each and every word that you find on this list. So this is a homework for you guys. So what you can do is, not just in this session, for every session or every day, in your vocabulary notebook, you make 4 columns, and in the first column you write any new noun that you learn. In the second, you write any new verb that you learned. Third, any new adjective or adverb. In the fourth, you can write some phrases or some idioms, right? For example, wenig aber besser, less but better. You can learn this and write them. So here I have created some for you. So please try to find out if you know the meanings of them before Googling. So just see, maybe you can print this out or take a screenshot and write the meanings of what these, for example, ziehen means to pull, aufhängen means to hang, auswählen means to choose, but then there is also wählen and auswählen. So what is the difference between wählen and auswählen? They both mean the same, but you use wählen when there are unlimited choices, okay? You use auswählen when the number of choices is limited, okay? Please try to do this, see if you know the meanings, and write the English meaning that you can think of, and then check if you are right or not, okay? Thank you very much for listening. See you next time.